From the University of Alaska Anchorage, this is Seawolf Voices, a podcast about the pathways to and from education. I'm your host, Matt Jardin. According to a report from Handshake, 57% of college students are pessimistic about their career prospects, citing high competition, job security, and unideal compensation and benefits. Similarly, a study by the Pew Research Center states that 52% of current workers are worried about AI's impact on the workplace. Helping us navigate the job market and hiring process is Alexis Rasley. Alexis is the Employer Relations and Workforce Development Manager at UAA Career Services, where she helps connect students and alumni to employers via workforce development, job shadowing, and internship opportunities. She is also a graduate herself, having earned her bachelor's in hospitality restaurant management in 2016. In this episode, Alexis talks about how to stand out from other applicants, describes the biggest mistake people make during the application process, and explains the value of going wherever the journey takes you. Alexis, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. You took some of my very first data points, so that's amazing. That's lovely. We're starting on the right page, which is fabulous. Exactly. So yeah, let's dive into it.
Awesome. And I'm glad they line up too, because it's always interesting if people have competing data points. So I'm glad that they're in the same ballpark.
Yes.
So I was going to try to start this off like a job interview and be like, so tell us about yourself. But what I'm really trying to ask is there anything that I missed in the introduction, or are there any other details that you want the audience to know?
I am always excited to share that I have been with UAA for quite some time, very proud Seawolf. And so I've been working in career services for the last 6 years and at UAA for about 10 years. And so that's kind of my background and where I come from and why I'm excited to share with everybody today.
All right, awesome. So I mentioned some of those numbers at the start of the episode, but you are actually on the ground having these conversations with students, with applicants, with employers. So in your actual experience, like, how are people feeling about the job market?
Yeah, that is such an interesting question, because what is factual and what is feeling are two different things, right? So factually, we're seeing that nationally there are more applicants than jobs, right? So there is this like stress of like, am I going to get a job? There's only so many and there's so many applicants, right? But in Alaska, we are very unique in that there's more jobs than qualified applicants, right? And so it's a different side of the coin. But I do think that external nationwide pressure still worries our local applicants as well. And obviously, we're talking about access to quality jobs that align with their education, that align with the pay and benefits that they're expecting. And so that just kind of narrows things down more and more and more and more. So applicants really are feeling pessimistic. They're feeling the pressure post-graduation, because I would say the students that are graduating today aren't just looking for a job. They're not just like, okay, I'll start somewhere and I'll bop around. They're really looking for a strong place to start, a strong place to rest their head for a little while. And so they're trying to find that match where it's like, this is a good place for me to learn and grow. There's going to be mentorship, there's going to be support, and there's going to be, fair compensation and benefits to kind of keep me afloat as I'm growing as a person. And so I think you're kind of nail on the head that there is some pessimism, but there's a little bit more to that story. It's not just that there's not jobs available, it's that people are coming out of graduation feeling like very specific about what they need to be successful. They're not just thinking about this current moment, but they're thinking about job stability and financial security for the long haul.
So I have thankfully not had to go job hunting in quite some time. So as a refresher for people like me, or, to kind of offer sort of a preview for students, like, what is that process like these days for people who are searching for a job?
So that's a great question. Of course, every industry is different. So the process for civil engineering is going to be different than nursing and all of that. But things have really changed with AI. AI has been around for a long time in the job search process. I mean, you think about even when we were applying, we put our resume in and it'll scrape to see if you meet minimum requirements. But that's just kind of amplified, right? And so I think that's part of why students are feeling so much competition and pressure, is because people are applying from all over. Pandemic and remote work has kind of changed the game. And so that's one layer to think about. And so with that, there's also sort of a negative connotation of AI too. So it's a balance of like, do these employers want me to flex my AI skills? Do they want me to show that I'm AI savvy? Or do they want me to not touch AI at all? And so that's a really difficult balance that you have to kind of navigate blind, that hasn't really been fleshed out yet. And so kind of knowing how much to use AI tools in your resume application process is tricky. I'll get to more of my advice on that in a bit. But the other big change that we're seeing, which I think is fantastic, is we're seeing more and more organizations do what we call skills-based hiring. And so that's where we're asking the applicants, the students, to demonstrate their skills through an assessment in part of the job application or a case study. And they're doing more behavioral-based interviews. Tell me about a time. How would you handle this situation? All of those things. And I think employers are really recognizing that the world is always changing. Things are always changing. And so we don't need people that know everything. We need people that are adaptable. We need people that are going to be able to learn from their mistakes, be flexible to change, be able to work as a team. And so they're really looking for those things that you can't necessarily teach. They're looking for the right attitude. They're looking for soft skills, and a willingness to learn and an ability to be taught. So I think that's a big change that we're maybe seeing, and it feels really positive.
So you mentioned AI. We can just jump right into talking about AI. I mentioned at the top that, there are a lot of people thinking about how AI is going to impact, getting hired or even keeping a job. And I know, like, anecdotally, I saw in the news all these stories of commencements where commencement speakers were talking about how students are going to be, or graduates are going to be entering the workforce that is so inundated with AI, and a lot of those graduates were booing because they don't know how AI is going to affect things. So talk a little bit more about how AI is just changing the work landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously this everybody having access to generative AI has really sort of blown our minds, and there's a lot of discussion and controversy about AI. And so that's out there. And like I said, feelings and facts are two different things. I think it was 45 or 35% of students cited AI as being one of the major reasons that they're pessimistic about the job market. Whether AI is coming for your job or not doesn't change how you feel about it and how you feel about the job market. So, that's one of the factors in how AI is impacting the job market. When we're looking at facts and we're looking at reality, the survey data is showing that less than 12% of companies are actually discussing replacing entry-level positions with AI. They're far more interested in finding ways to utilize AI as a tool to increase efficiency. I think that senior level leaders have a lot of interest in AI, right? It's new, it's fabulous. It seems like a great tool, but they maybe don't really have the same firm grasp on the reality of using that. And so they're talking about it at commencement ceremonies, and they're getting really excited, right? And then they're getting this feedback from students that they don't like it. And so that's something that I think folks are going to have to figure out, because I am seeing more job descriptions that are having AI listed in the descriptor. I'm seeing more interns being assigned work that has an AI component to it. I think there is some excitement for them to work with their recent graduates on integrating that into their organization. So I do think that is something that's happening. Do I think it's going to replace your job tomorrow? Personally, from the studies that I'm seeing, I don't. But I do think we are at this real point of opportunity for generations in the workplace to come together and build the true map for how AI should be embedded into our work. As you've said, like the Gen Z population that is graduating now has a lot more reservations than I think people would think. But on the flip side, I think we can also understand why senior leadership might be thinking strategically about adding AI in. We have in Alaska specifically an aging workforce, and pretty soon we're going to be, by 2030, we're losing a lot of our workforce through the baby boomers. And we also have a shrinking population. The 1824 population, it is shrinking. We've had a lot of out-migration in Alaska. The birth rates are declining. That's going to catch up to us in the future. We're not there yet. But I do think that senior leaders are thinking about, how do we maintain the status quo? Of course, how do we save money? How do we stay productive? And how do we keep up with things? And I hope that these generations will come together and really find the answer that meets both the moral and ethical obligation, but also sustains what's needed for our community and our economy. Very interesting point that we're at.
What are some things that students can do to prepare to enter the job market after graduating?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. So, one of the big things that they can do to prepare to enter the job market is experiential learning. So, primarily that is going to be internships. Internships are the big deciding factor on if you're deciding between two applicants with the same education, with the same background. If one has an internship and the other doesn't, they're by and large more desirable. The internship experience is going to give them the hands-on experience in the industry that is really desirable to employers. It's not about being perfect, but it's about, again, showcasing that you have that ability to learn and grow and that you have the initiative to go and do those things. So internship is hugely important. If you're not able to do that, on-campus employment is great, research is great. If you're a practicum student in the health fields, any kind of experience as close to industry as possible is fantastic. If you cannot do something in your industry because, financial obligations, or you have to go home and work for your family business, different things like that, it's really important that you can minimally articulate your skills and experience and how you can apply that to the jobs in which you're applying for. This all kind of relates back to how employers are changing to this skills-based hiring. And so they want to see that you are not a perfect person that knows everything, because everything's always changing, but that you have some of those strong core skills that are really essential for entry-level positions and that you're teachable. And just because I said it, those strong core skills that are kind of essential that we're kind of seeing popping up time and time again are going to be teamwork, critical thinking, communication, and professionalism. And so those are the things that you really kind of want to hit hard on and learn more about, and ask your professors feedback about, and talk to your supervisors about how am I rating on these? What can I do to improve? So
yeah, I definitely agree with the internship thing, because that's how I entered the job market. In high school, actually, was I got this internship, and it wasn't even an internship in the field that I was studying to be in, but when I was able to join that organization through this internship, you get your foot in the door, and then you can kind of move anywhere in the organization once you're in. And then once I was aligned in marketing communications, it was easy enough to parlay that outside into another organization that is more communications marketing centric. So definitely agree with the value of the internship.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It doesn't always have to be in your exact field. Sometimes it's your foot in the door with the company. Sometimes it's just showcasing the caliber of work and professionalism that you're able to produce. There's just a lot of benefits to internships, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. Just do one.
Yeah. So out of curiosity, what has your own professional trajectory been like? Did you use any of those similar strategies when you were entering the workforce?
Yeah, I saw this question and I'm embarrassed. I don't even know. Gosh, I don't know where to start, or if there's anything really special about my story. I am a first generation college student from a tiny town in Minnesota. Started out doing community college and then had some family in Alaska and transferred up to round out my degree. I had in my head for the longest time that I wanted to be a hotel manager. I worked in hotels all through community college and all through college, and I just thought this is such an exceptional way to meet people and to share your local community and to share Alaska, and I really enjoyed that. Fast forward, I graduate in 2016, and the industry just kind of burns me out really quickly. The end result, the compensation didn't really match the workload and the experience that I had, and it was really tough. And so I came back in to the University of Alaska Anchorage, a place that had been a wonderful home for me and a wonderful supporter for me. And I began as an admin assistant in the College of Health, Allied Health. And I think it's the best decision I ever made. This was kind of like my internship. I came in not really sure what I wanted to do, but I had these skills and this desire to develop as a professional, and they really kind of supported me there. And from there, I moved to admissions and then to career services, and I've been there for 6 years, and it's been pretty fabulous. Did I use the advice that I'm giving you now as well as I should have? Maybe not. Maybe not. I did not use my career center while I was in college. I do regret that. And I don't think I made as many mistakes and tried as many things as I could have in college. I think that kind of helps you learn where do I want to be when I graduate? But I also think that I'm a great example because I have met with many students and alumni who are where I'm at, where they're like, well, I went in and I got good grades and this is what I said I wanted to do. And then I went out to do it and it didn't work for me. So based on my experience, if I'm to give you advice, if you get to the point where I'm at, is just know that you never know what's around the corner. My motto has kind of just been go where the journey takes you. Kind of doing what feels right? You have to be happy in your work. You have to feel fulfilled in your work. And so don't try so hard to make the shoe fit if it's not fitting. Feel free to move on to the next thing and to just take it in stride, to learn and grow and see where that takes you. And I think it's taken me a really wonderful place. I'm very, like I said, UAA proud and happy to be here. And so I'm very grateful that I came into UAA and I just said, okay, let's see what's next. And it's been awesome.
That's wonderful. Well, so I wouldn't say that you haven't taken any of your own advice. Like you started.
I think it took a little while.
Yeah. But you got your foot in the door, not necessarily doing the thing that you went to school for or wanted to do, but as long as you had your foot in the door, then you were able to move throughout the organization into the direction that was closer to what you wanted to be doing.
Absolutely.
So this isn't necessarily just for students, but how can anyone stand out during the application process, whether that be in the resume writing or during the interview process, etc.? Like how can anyone just stand out in that very highly competitive market?
Yeah, that is such a great question. And in career services, we serve both students and alumni. And so this is advice that I've given to both parties. It doesn't change. Doing your research really matters, especially in this AI world where people can shoot out 30, 100 applications that are just generic. So it's really important to do your research and understand who you are applying for, like what organization you're applying for, who are they, what are their needs, and how can you fulfill those needs. You need to make sure that every application is tailored to the job that you apply for. And I get so much pushback on that. They're like, really? Every application specifically tailored? And my answer is yes. Even if you're applying for marketing job A, marketing job B, marketing job C, they are all a little bit different. When you're applying for jobs in the same very same field, very similar buckets, it is easier to tailor that resume than when you're applying for, graphics versus marketing versus PR, right? Those are kind of different buckets. But you really do have to tailor that application because they're getting so many. They're maybe using AI to scrub for those keywords and those minimal qualifications, but you have to show them that you are able to meet the needs. That's how you're going to get the interview. It's also essential that you practice for the interview, whether that means doing what I did not and going to your career center for a mock interview, or practicing with a friend, or practicing in front of a mirror, or if it's a virtual interview, highly recommend recording yourself on Zoom and watching it, even though it's so cringe. It's so helpful. You can also practice with ChatGPT or some type of generative AI if that's your thing. I would just, instead of typing it, turn on the talk to text so it is very real, have it ask you questions and talk back. So there's a lot of different options for practicing, but you only get these couple things to introduce yourself and to sing your praises. And so you want to do that the best that you possibly can. And if you're thinking, well, I can't tailor 100 applications, you probably shouldn't be submitting 100 applications because you probably don't really want to work 100 places. Really need to be narrowing it down to, the 6 to 10 that you are super interested in, and just kind of rinse, repeat. But you're going to have so much more success when you tailor those resumes and you plug it to the specific positions that you're highly interested in.
So kind of on the flip side of that, what mistakes have you seen people make when looking for a job?
Great question. One of the biggest mistakes I see from both the student side, the alumni side, and our non-traditional students who are coming back for a second career. Everybody's making the same mistake in all the groups, and you can't come back from it. I think that's why it's my biggest mistake. You can't come back from being too confident and assuming you have the job. Most of the time, that really rubs people the wrong way and turns them off.
Mm-hmm.
You can come back from making a mistake. You can come back from being really nervous, right? We've all been there. You can even come back for, oh my gosh, I missed my interview. My time zone was wrong. I've heard that happen, and people know what happens. Technology is against us. But it's really, really hard to come back from being too confident and assuming that you have the job. And so the way that I kind of see this is, as I see it with people that are doing a second career, and they're like, well, I don't need to do my resume, or I don't really need to practice for this interview because I've done a lot of interviews and I've always got the job. Well, now you're probably in a new field. Things have changed a lot. You're not just like, oh, I'm in the field and like I'm just kind of going up, up, up. So that's something to think about. I also see this sometimes like when we've got like our practicum students who have been on site and they really connected with the facilitators, and that's a fantastic thing. Or people that are internal, so maybe they've interned with them or they've entry level employed with them and now they're trying to move up. So in those situations, people will often assume like, oh, I have the job, or oh, I don't really need to explain my skills because they know me. But as you and I know, that is not how the hiring rubrics work. You have to score people based on what they put in. I can't do favoritism. I can't go, well, she didn't put it on her resume, but I knew she did that project. Well, she didn't say it in her interview, but I know she's a great manager, right? So you really have to sort of humbly sell yourself regardless of what those relationships and experience are. And then I'll just lastly say, I said humbly because especially if you're an internal candidate, you don't want to be too cocky. You want to remind people that you are a team player and you can be part of the team as well. So that I think is the biggest mistake is you do have to sing your praises, but you need to be a bit humble about it. You need to showcase the full breadth of what you can offer.
I'm also glad that you said that even if you have a job and are used to the hiring process, you've still been out of the game. And you should probably brush up on those interview skills, because the last time, many, many, many years ago, when I was looking for a job and eventually got this one, I was putting out applications and that was me. Like, I don't really need to brush up on interviews, right? Like I can just go in, do a little bit of research on the company, but kind of just get by on my experience at that point. And I'm glad that my interview here was not one of those first interviews, because some of those first interviews were not that great because I was just out of the game for too long, just kind of riding on my past experience. And I was really rusty when I was putting myself back out there.
Yeah, you're just rusty and you don't realize how things change a little bit, right?
Yeah. So you are in a unique position in that you not only help applicants, but you also help employers. So what can you tell us about the hiring process from that other perspective, from that employer side of things?
So I think I'm going to continue to hit on that there really needs to be a focus on soft skills, the focus on teachability, the focus on the ability to learn. Those are some of the big things that come up. Just because we're just talking about interviews, my head goes to a little bit of change. Still in line with skills, there's been a lot more questions about, can you tell me about a time you failed? Can you tell me about weakness? And so I think that's really something to expect from your employers as well. That is a way to showcase that you can learn from your mistakes. Everybody's going to make them, but showcasing your ability to learn. So kind of wrapping that in the bow, we're still seeing a lot of focus on the skills. I think also from the employer side on the hiring process, I mean, I think they're feeling the crunch too. I think they're feeling the stress as well. They have this fear that Gen Z are going to hop. They have this fear that Gen Z is not loyal, that they're going to just pick the job with the most money and they don't really care about the organization. And so it's kind of interesting, this facts versus feelings. We know Gen Z to be very loyal. Once they find a spot, they want to stay there, but employers are not feeling that. And so I think they have these hesitations and these fears as well, which you can imagine how smooth that makes the hiring process, right? Like the applicant is kind of feeling stressed and they're feeling like the pessimistic, and the employer is feeling kind of stressed and pessimistic. And so really just kind of showing up as your authentic self, showing up knowing what you want and kind of being clear about that, using the interview as an opportunity to interview them as well, to just make sure that you're making an informed choice. I think for a while they've been burned a lot by people reneging on offers or people accepting a position, working a few weeks and going, ooh, this company culture is not for me. And so really taking the time, even before the application process to build the relationship and find out what's right is really helpful for both parties.
So obviously we work at a university, but UAA specifically prides itself on being a dual mission institution. So while UAA does emphasize this traditional, academic and research experience, there is also a huge emphasis on preparing students to enter the workforce after graduating. Of course, there are many routes to getting a job or starting a business that don't necessarily require a degree. But in your experience, what impact does a university education have on someone's job prospects?
Yeah, I think it can really remove barriers. I think it's I don't want to say easy because college is not easy, but it is a strong way to enter into the workforce and kind of have a little bit of a leg up, right? You have that piece of paper, and that there's worth in that piece of paper that proves that you are at a level of skill and professionalism. And obviously there are many ways to earn great money and to have a great job, especially here in Alaska. But what we know is that the data still shows that having a bachelor's degree, you're on average getting paid 60% more than somebody with a high school diploma. Having an associate's degree, it's 18%, right? So those numbers matter and they make a difference. And for myself personally, UAA is a great institution that really helps you work while you're in school, if that's something that you need, that helps you apply that education to what you're going to do. I always felt that when I was in my classes, I wasn't thinking that these were theoretical things that we were learning. It was always being applied back. And so I think that even that education and that knowledge in the community about what a UAA education is really helps take people far in their industry as well. So I think it just provides rich opportunity. Obviously, I support anybody that a university education isn't from them. We all learn in different ways and different shapes. But like you said, UAA has a lot of opportunities, from coming in and getting an OEC in bookkeeping or entrepreneurship to all the way to, advanced degrees, right? So a lot of opportunity.
What is the best advice that you have for someone who's trying to look for a job? And I know that this whole podcast episode has been about advice, but is there one best key bit of advice that you offer to anyone?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the best key advice, but this is what comes to mind. So going back to my previous statement, you have to do your research, you have to prepare, and you have to practice. But part of that doing your research and preparing is you have to know yourself and what you want. So when I said you shouldn't be applying for 100 jobs, you should be applying for the 6 that you really want. You're applying for that 6 authentically. You're researching them to see if they fit your needs. I think that's the best way to get hired in a position where you're going to be there to stay, where you're going to be there to learn and grow. So it's really important that you spend time figuring out what it is you want and know when to walk away from that opportunity if it's not what you want. Like I said, go with the journey. Go with the journey and trust that there's going to be something right for you around the corner.
Alexis, that was everything that I had for you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
We did it. Thank you.
We did it.
Really appreciate being here. I hope this is helpful to somebody. And if anybody wants more, UAA students and alumni, our services are 100% free. Please connect with Career Services if ever you need.
Seawolf Voices is a production of the Office of Alumni and Community Engagement and University Marketing and Communications.